before you as I bow my head in prayer. Take this day, make it yours, and fill me with your love. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu. All I have I give you, every dream and wish are yours. Mother of Christ, Mother of mine, present them to my Lord. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu. As I kneel before you and I see your smiling face, every thought, every word is lost in your embrace. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Catholics at Home in collaboration with the Catholic Research Center in Kuala Lumpur. Now, today's show is going to be an exciting show because we're going to talk about how the church has been coping with COVID-19, the pandemic, and all the MCOs that we've been through right here in Malaysia. And so who better to talk to about that than the man himself, the top man himself, Most Reverend Archbishop Julian Leow. But before that, let me invite Father Clarence with us to join the conversation.
Hi, Kevin. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. How are you today, Father Clarence?
I'm good, Kevin. Good.
Right, looks like the year is passing by very fast. So we're already in September, and not too long from now, it's going to be Christmas.
It's going to be a different Christmas, you know. Certainly not a white Christmas. It's going to be a quieter Christmas in many ways for a lot of us.
Exactly. So we're all adjusting to this new norm, as they say. But of course, we've been doing this for the past 6 months already. and it's good to know how the church, especially the Archdiocese, is coping throughout this past 6 months. So, previously we had Archbishop Julian on for the sacerdotal anniversary, his sacerdotal anniversary. So we just focus on that and his life and his background and stuff. But right now, it's a good as time as many to be talking about how the church is coping with COVID-19, right?
Yeah, and now that we are slowly beginning to open, I'm sure there are lots of people are looking forward to going back to church. Of course, there are people who are afraid to go back to church. There are lots of opportunities that the pandemic has provided. Of course, challenges also, and I think it's so appropriate that we have Archbishop Julian here with us this morning for this conversation. To what I say is to pick his mind a little bit, pick his thoughts with regard to how he has been managing COVID-19. I think, as you say, it's unprecedented. Nobody has done this before. It's a steep learning curve for everyone. I'm sure it's for him too. So I thought, what a wonderful way to have him and to listen to him and how he has been coping and how he has been managing the Archdiocese through a pandemic.
All right, so I'm sure many viewers are tuning in to watch this show because the Archbishop is on. So let's bring him on. Most Reverend Archbishop Julian Leow, welcome back to Catholics at Home.
Hi, Kevin. Hi, Father Clarence.
Hi, morning, Archbishop.
Good morning to you both.
All right, so Your Grace, this is your second time on the show. The first one, of course, we talked about your background and your life and your priesthood and all that. Now we're going to talk about how the church was coping in COVID-19 and moving forward. So I don't know which one had more tough questions for you. Maybe today's show might be a little trickier. A lot of questions for you and how the church is coping. A lot of our viewers, of course, had many questions throughout this past 6 months, and I'm sure right now still have many questions. So we'll talk about this and let us know more about how you personally have been coping, not just the Archdiocese. We've had a lot of information and all the official letters coming through, but we also like to know how you personally have been dealing with COVID-19 and the pandemic. So far, it's been 6 months already. How do you think you've been handling all the situations personally?
Well, as mentioned earlier, this is unprecedented times, and I'm also learning to cope in this situation. Besides personally having, I think at this point in time, we are slowly opening. So things are perhaps getting a little bit more coming back to face-to-face meetings a little bit more. Perhaps in the beginning, not so many meetings or nil when there's no face-to-face. At that time, perhaps there was more time for spiritual reflection and more time to spend with the Lord, I guess, in the early few months. But currently, as we are beginning to open and as we are trying to cope with, as you mentioned, there are many queries now. When can we get back to the old normal? Perhaps never, but the new normal now is trying to do the best we can with this invisible virus that is still with us, that has not gone away, perhaps being controlled a little bit better. But just a few days ago, I think we hit 3 figures again with the number of infections. So with the virus still very real, I think the Archdiocese still has to be always on our toes, so to speak, because we'll just never know when a new cluster may just pop up around us.
And I'm sure for you, Your Grace, as most of us, those of us who know you well, you're not one to like to hang around the office. You like to be out meeting people, and not just the clergy, but the parishioners and the faithful and stuff. So, how did you feel? Being all these restrictions. Tell us about how did you feel?
yeah, it felt a little bit weird to be a priest and to be a bishop and not to be with your people, with others. As I said, the first few months when it was really a lockdown, it was really to make it a positive viewpoint. I look at it as a 3-month, 4-month silent retreat, so to speak. A time where I could be by myself and not having all those meetings back to back. I think that was a welcome break. It's almost back to normal now in the sense of appointments back to back. But yes, as what you said, Kevin, I think my Huawei step count tells me that I've walked more in those first, I think, April, May, that I've done in the past months or the past couple of years. I've walked more, I've spent more time exercising, and perhaps that's a positive thing that has also happened. I'm looking trimmer, I hope, and one of the few who have lost weight, I guess, during this MCO.
Oh, is that why you asked for this online meeting, so we can only capture your face, not the waistline?
We could all stand up afterwards at the end of the show. Take a measurement.
Well, you better not ask Kevin to do that, Archbishop, because he only waist above. He's well and decent and dressed well for the meeting. That's what happens in many of the Zoom meetings. They may be in their shorts. No, Archbishop, I think one of the things that we struggle through is also that when here in the Archdiocese, we actually closed the churches well before the government actually imposed the MCO. I think it was about a week before, and it must have been a very difficult decision for you to make, as the spiritual leader of your flock, to decide to, suspend all masses. Was it a difficult decision for you to make? And what ran through your mind? How did you feel about that?
Yes, thanks for that reminder, Father Clarence. It was just yesterday. I think we had to make that decision, but it was not made alone. I had a task force, a group of doctors. There were a couple of priests also. So we had people, priests, doctors in the front line to advise us in this little task force. And of course, I think just a couple of weeks, I think, before making that decision, I think Singapore had already done something like that. And so it was, I think, a painful time to have made that decision. But I think looking back, it was the right decision, because the health, the safety of our people, I think, should always be foremost in our minds and in all that we do, even today. Even today, as we open in phases, as different parishes that are ready have started even daily masses just recently, we must always keep behind our minds that the virus is still there and it has not changed. We have not got a vaccine. We have not got any medication for this virus. And to be always aware that if I let our guard down, it could just pop up with clusters that we are seeing in Kedah, in Sabah, and in few places around us.
During this time, also you read a lot of literature about church, about faith, about pandemics. There's a lot of literature out there also that seems to say that at a time like this, when people need to go back to church, they are not able to go back to church. It's a difficult decision. I guess, as you said, with the task force, our faith is also always guided by reason, and good reason, and to be able to make those decisions to protect the lives of many people. But I think generally you find that people have been quite cooperative, at least in the early stages. The diocese found other alternatives for people. Maybe your experience of doing the live masses, how was it for you?
Yes, speaking to an empty church, I think it's a new feeling, very different. Nevertheless, I guess it is the best way, the best avenue, while we were still live broadcasting, live streaming from CDM. Initially, we started in a little small chapel, for a better word. Then we moved back into the main church, which was even more different. With the whole big church that can fit 2,000 to 3,000, there were only, I think, 2 people in front of us, the reader and perhaps the one looking after the live streaming. So it was different, but I guess like everyone else, I think we all have to make that change, or that adjustment in the way we attend Mass, celebrate Mass. And the dispensation has been given for the Sunday obligation, so our people need not feel guilty not coming to church on Sundays. And this is something we will review with the clergy and with the task force, how, as we move forward, as we slowly open up, there will be reviews, there will be evaluations on our SOPs and what we are doing. So I ask our people, I think, for patience, for understanding. Yes, on the one hand, many are just waiting to come back to the old normal, to get back to church and to experience that community, that fellowship. I also like to caution all of us also that yes, we are all waiting to get back to that old normal, but we also need to be very conscious of the realities on the ground today. And as I mentioned, the safety, the health of every one of our parishioners is foremost in our minds when we make decisions.
Just going back to the task force, Bishop, what were the challenges that they faced? And also maybe was there any challenges with the government's SOPs in place?
Yes, especially towards the end of we had dialogues with various ministries, especially the Unity ministry, which was in charge for the different places of worship. We had meetings online and trying to plan, trying to work together what is best for our worshippers, our parishioners. And there were discussions, there were sometimes disagreements, but we always worked through, we always spoke, and we always tried to also think of what is best for our people, to always be inclusive. And then we had different restrictions on the age limit, etc. And we also understand the elderly and the very young were more prone to this virus. As we got to know more and more about the virus, I guess various SOPs started to change or develop, and this is something, it is still ongoing. And I believe, yes, the very ones that normally come to church, normally fill our pews, are the most senior ones. And I know and I understand many are going through a difficult period now, unable to come physically. When initially the SOP said those above 70 are not allowed um, for the first few months. Until lately, I think just a week ago, or a week or two ago, they allowed, they say it is now allowed for the elderly, but not encouraged, but they allow them to come for masses, etc. And foreigners too, I think was another topic that was a bit contentious, in the sense there were many knocking on our doors, and at the cathedral, I think we know many. There are more non-Malaysians who come for mass than our actual Malaysians. So there was that struggle um, to want to allow all or as many to come into church, and I was quite saddened also when I saw uh, people standing outside the gates of St. John's Cathedral, couldn't get in because they were non-Malaysians, who have been here probably many years, standing out there, listening, trying to listen in, trying to attend mass from outside at the main roads. It broke my heart to see that, but I realized it was the government's decision at that point in time, still not to allow foreigners into our places of worship. And I guess it's because of the mosques, I believe, have many uh, uh, worshippers going to the different mosques, and many of them were foreigners. Uh, and to have one law or one rule, I guess, to fit all, it was a blanket uh, prohibition for foreigners to attend our places of worship. And there were many attempts to try to ask, to request, when can the foreigners come back to our places of worship. And I think September 1st, I think, was the date that, if I'm not mistaken, Wilayah allowed foreigners to go back to mosques. And I personally also inquired whether this rule would also be applicable to all places of worship, that whether we could all allow foreigners back into our places of worship, into our churches. And there were the reply from the authorities was, let us wait. Let us wait for the official announcement. And we got that, I think, on the 4th of September, if I'm not mistaken. So they responded just quite quickly, and I'm grateful to the authorities for that. And they also updated some of their SOPs, I think, on that day. Although not everything is updated yet, and that's where I mentioned, I asked for patience from our people on this matter.
Yeah, Bishop, certainly you're the shepherd of the Catholic community here in KL and Malaysia. But also regarding all these challenges that you face, I'm sure other Christian denominations also face these similar challenges. Can you talk a bit about the unity that the Catholics and all the other denominations, what they have come together to help to resolve all the issues that we faced as Christians?
I think there are many issues still not resolved. I mean, if we are talking about just on the pandemic, I think we are all independent. We make our own decisions, even the different Christian groups. I believe there are some who waited up to the end of or at least 31st of August. Some did not even open their places of worship, their churches, because they also wanted to ensure health, safety for their parishioners. As I mentioned, yes, there were a lot of cooperation among people of different faiths, and even among our Christians. The CFM have also played a role to try to speak for not just for Christians but also for all. And there are times we are able to meet up with authorities online or otherwise. And I guess everyone is also trying to cope. I guess the authorities also have different departments to look into different SOPs for schools, for weddings, for registrations, for funerals. So I guess there are quite a few different departments looking into this, and it's not an easy task trying to coordinate not just Catholics, Christians, but thousands of temples, gurdwaras, mosques, churches. So the authorities, I don't envy them trying to manage all this in the early days, and even today. But we are still in close contact with some of these officials.
Well, I believe, as you mentioned in the beginning, there's always this ongoing conversation that is taking place, which people don't hear or people don't know about it, and very quickly jump to some kind of conclusions about, why isn't the church speaking up for me? Why isn't the church defending me? And I think you brought up a very important point, that there is this ongoing conversation that is taking place between the church and then you as the president of the Interreligious Council, also with the other religions in the country, the heads of the other religions, and then trying to engage with the respective ministries or departments. Must have been quite a task trying to put all this together, and yet trying to keep some sense of normalcy into what is happening. But now that we are slowly beginning to open, and more and more things are being allowed. Of course, I mean, humans being humans, we want everything as it was before, and as it will be, and forever and ever. Amen. If you can say to that. But this is something that we are going little by little. I just want to deflect a little bit about Kevin. Have you gone back? Have you gone back to church, Kevin? Have you gone back to mass?
I have not.
Okay, all right. Archbishop, now you need to talk to him. Yeah, but we also see that parishes also have their own kind of not struggle but challenges in opening the churches. Maybe you want to highlight some of the challenges. Of course, the government comes up with regulation, then the church has. Then down in the level, maybe I will share a little bit about parish life, at least from what you have heard. I'm sure parishes have also challenges, of resuming masses. Maybe you will speak a little bit about some of the challenges that you have heard parishes are encountering.
Yes, I think many in the beginning, I think they were struggling with having even one mass on the Sunday, getting their own response team ready, volunteers. I think all the SOPs, taking temperatures, scanning the My Sejahtera and Selangkah for Selangor, and recording all these things in books. It is quite a task, I believe, for especially the smaller parishes to get all these things ready for them to start or restart their Sunday masses. So I understand many have started with one mass, and some have gone to their second and maybe even a third on a Sunday or a sunset mass. But this would require also sanitizing the premises and of course the toilets, the offices where people go. So it's a big coordination to open our churches, and that's why I also hear there are some parishes, not in this diocese, but have struggled to even open, and I'm not sure whether as of 31st August, I know there were a couple who have not yet opened, even at that late stage. Perhaps, for whatever reason they may have. So I understand some parishes are struggling with manpower, especially the smaller ones, and also making the decision, priests, our parish priests, to be able to manage all these volunteers, people coming, especially those who are over 70. As I mentioned, initially they were not permitted to come to places of worship. Now they are not encouraged, but they can come. And I believe some parishes have prepared a disclaimer form also, to let the people, especially not just the aged only, I like to mention here, but those with pre-existing conditions, those who are not too healthy also, they run a bigger risk being exposed to the crowds in churches. That's why I cannot stress enough that we must continue to keep all our SOPs in place, and we must always ensure safety for ourselves and for others. And I hope the churches will continue to advocate this strict SOPs, and I think our churches too have, as we begin to open, questions about BEC gatherings, questions about catechism classes, RCIA, whether we can meet face to face. Once again, I hope and I ask for your patience that if and only if the parishes can ensure all these safety precautions are taken, all the SOPs are followed strictly, then if you can really ensure this, then by all means, take the next step to reopen your catechism classes. But it's always, I feel, if you're not ready, please do not do so. And to ensure that this safety of our people is not forgotten in the reason, or we want to restart many things. Let us make sure our people are safe. That should be foremost in our decisions.
I think one of the things that people they don't see, there's a lot of, this is like a major operations that you need to coordinate of getting the church ready. I mean, Archbishop, you know that you've given me two parishes to look after, and two quite different. One urban, one is not rural, but right at the periphery of the Archdiocese. Urban parish, very easy for me to form a team. In the smaller parish that I go to, on the first Sunday I open, I had to stand there and take temperature, and record. So, not that I'm complaining, but sometimes I think we are all struggling with manpower, with volunteers, cleaning the churches. So the more we open, the more volunteers we need to sanitize the church. Like masses, like how we did before, because I mean, in a small parish, how do I afford to pay a cleaning company to come and clean each time? So it all depends on the people, the generosity of the people.
Penance for the penance.
Pardon?
Penance.
You know, or we can't have confessions, but social confessions, so can't give them penance to clean the church either. So, but yeah, I think every parish has got opportunities. Parish has got their own struggles in terms of manpower, logistics, certain limitations. And we all trying to work with it. I think it's very very good that when the diocese comes out with some SOPs, and then also gives the parish priest some leeway to be able to manage, given what resources we have. That helps us also manage better. I really can't expect what I have in the urban parish in a smaller parish. A lot of my parishioners in the small town they are above 70. So how do I bring them in? But it's kind of a challenge sometimes. Also people find it quite difficult to accept, because not realizing that there's so many things that needs to be done before we open our doors.
Yeah, and as we move forward with the reopening in stages, like Bishop, you mentioned that patience is required, and I'm sure many of us are glad to hear that our the foreigners brothers and sisters are able to now participate back in the celebration of the Eucharist. But maybe I can ask both of you, Bishop and Father Clarence, what will be I suppose, your immediate priorities now? Like now we've got the foreigners back in church. Can you mention one or two priorities that the church will be working on?
Clarence?
Archbishop, you want to go first? Okay, at least for me, I think people confidence to come back to church. I've been trying to work on that. People are still there are people who are not very confident. I mean, we realize that many people have also gotten used to the online masses. From bed to the couch to the TV room has become comfortable for many people. So I think the confidence to come back to church for everyone, then which means that extra precautions need to be taken. Then I find myself being very strict about having to scan, having to sanitize your hands. Build up that confidence for people to come back, and for the elderly. I mean, I am starting one mask for the elderly who are able to come, but with greater social distancing. And I think if they are a bit more comfortable, it's not just the elderly, but I think also family members are afraid to let their parents go. I mean, it's a very legitimate fear, I think. But if we take those kind of things that get people to understand, this is something new that we are trying, and give them the confidence to come back, I think then we take the step. But I think for me as a priest, the challenge is, everybody wants us up and running, doing the 100-meter sprint like Usain Bolt. As soon as we open everything up and running, I find it very challenging. Because of many other things that are. For me, it's getting them confident to come back, and wanting to come back also.
For me, I think, that's a good point, Father Clarence. The confidence. If the confidence is not there, many will stay away. My emphasis, or what are the priorities, I think, are for those who have not been able to come all these months. I think that is a group I think I would like to try to address. And I think there are some parishes who have been creative. They've allowed some of the elderly to come, what we call the drive-in, drive-by, attending a little para-liturgy, a little service outside the church, and then driving by to receive communion. Of course, that's not the best. That's not the suggested way of attending mass. But in such circumstances, to invite our elderly to receive the Lord. And I'm told many were tearing when they received the Lord after so many months. They could come without coming in their cars, could receive the Lord after a little short prayer and preparation. So to tackle, to see who are the ones that have been neglected, have been isolated, and I think this is another area that I hope our BECs um, can play that role to reach out to many of those who live alone, who are unable to come to church, that we can play that role of accompaniment, even physically for the younger ones, the healthier ones, perhaps to reach out to minister to some of these who are unable to come to church, who are unable to receive communion. And I believe many of our priests and the communion ministers are reaching out to some of these homebound parishioners.
So it's great that the Archdiocese have been taking the approach of thinking outside the box on how to get the sacraments and all that to the parishioners. Was there anything that you thought, Bishop, that should have been done differently now?
What we have done so far, I think I could say, I think we have done quite well. I believe from the initial scare of if you remember in the early days, we had a scare from. Can I mention the name of the place? I think we all know.
Yes.
Puchong,
Yeah.
Puchong, and at that mass where right of election, I think, in Kajang in November, if I'm not mistaken, or end of November, early December. That was the first scare we had of COVID right at our doorstep, or in fact, it came into our church already. And since then, I think we had just only one recently from out of KL, having one positive within KL, within the church circles, as far as I know. These were the only two cases that has affected the Catholic Church, or at least the Archdiocese. I think we have been very lucky, or we have been very fortunate that we were able to, with all our SOPs, I believe, with all that we have been doing, and a big thank you to the task force and to all our parishes for adhering to the SOPs, and of course to the authorities for ensuring that we follow these SOPs to the letter. I think we have been very fortunate to have kept our numbers low as far as infections are concerned. So whether we could have done better, of course, there's always room for improvement. But I think what we have done so far, so good. I would say. Tomorrow, in the future, I hope and I pray and I appeal to all our parishes, and in general to the public also, to do not let our guard down, to continue with all that we have done these past months. And as I said, the virus has not gone away. It is still lurking, especially the asymptomatic ones that we will never know. So we cannot afford to let our guard down. And all it takes is just one infection to start the fire burning, and this is something we pray will never happen in our churches, in our places of worship, in our society. And it and we can play our part by always being cautious, by always adhering to the SOPs.
Bishop, you mentioned about that one that can start a fire. Just can I say, would you fear that Christians might be stigmatized if just say a church, one of our churches, started to begin to create a cluster? Do you think that we would be stigmatized?
Well, I guess for a while, if I was just looking at some statistics just yesterday, um, all the different clusters in Malaysia. I think churches, I saw one category under churches, we had 191, I think, infections. It was somewhere at the bottom of the list. And then you have the different groups. I think the Sabah one, the Kedah one, and of course the different groups that have different clusters. I guess it may be stigmatized for a short while, and then I guess everybody goes back to its complacent mode, and I don't think it will last too long. But stigmatized in the positive sense, I guess we don't want to be that cluster to have caused thousands or hundreds to be infected. I pray and I hope nobody will want this for their own communities. So let us keep our guard always up and cautious in what we do.
In some ways, I think, like you mentioned earlier, nothing prepares us for this. I mean, at least not the seminary syllabus. I don't think that the bishop's course that you go to for in Rome also prepares you for something like this. A situation that is, we keep saying, is unprecedented. We never lived through a situation like this. And the reality is that, in the beginning, the goalposts kept changing. I wouldn't want to say every week, every day. Everybody was rushing to watch TV updates, what was happening. I suppose in some ways, we always think for our churches, all these extra precautionary measures that we take to safeguard the people. And at least I think is the good old saying is better to be safe than to be sorry. But sometimes, all these extra precautions that we take does not augur very well with people who are not used to this, going to church. I mean, you go to church, your temperature is taken, you have a seat number assigned, you have an usher that tells you where to sit. You have no choice but to sit in that particular place and not move anywhere. So I guess it has made us even rethink, what we need to do. Maybe going forward, Archbishop, what do you think that, this pandemic has taught us as church, as we move into a recovery mode? How will we look at things, and what should we be doing differently from, if not for this pandemic, we wouldn't have thought about it at least. Maybe just to get you started going, I mean, I can think of is like the use of online technology now has pushed us in this direction, which I think we were not so engaged. I that's the first thing that strikes me. But from your side, you see there's something that will kind of like, will change after this for the better?
Yes, I hope that there'll be lessons learned personally for myself, and I hope for the church also here, to relook perhaps at our own lifestyles, to look at what is important in life, what are the essentials, the many hours, the many days that we have trying to make sense of why just practically overnight this whole virus had put the whole world perhaps to a standstill. Have we learned anything from this? Have I learned anything from this? I think it's a question all of us can and should reflect upon. And for me, this is where I think now the BECs somehow comes to the fore. That network of small families, communities in our parishes, I think it is even more important today that we reactivate, that our BECs must play that role of keeping in touch with the vulnerable, the ones that are unable to come to church. This is where that network of contacts as leaders, as BEC leaders, as parish priests, as bishop, um, to make sure that our BECs are able to be that link, especially to those that they find themselves isolated during this pandemic. So the trust that our PMPC, our Peninsular Malaysia, had taken since 1976 up to now, I think today it is really tested, and those BECs that have been functioning, I guess, will be at a head start in spearheading care, concern, even food, even looking after those who are struggling financially. This is where the network, the contacts at our BEC can just go into active mode. For those BECs that are dormant or have not been functioning well, I hope this will be a wake-up call for us, and I pray that our bishop, our priests also will push for this to make sure that this area, our BECs, can be reactivated, to keep in touch, to attend to the needs of the many. And I don't just speak of Catholics, but in the tamans, in the places where our BEC boundaries are drawn, we can be a witness there to providing care, whatever material needs. And I just want to reiterate here online once again, parishes that need um, assistance, whether it's financially or otherwise, uh, please please let us know. Please let the diocese know, the your senators know how the diocese can assist you, whatever resources that you may need to reach out and to practice or to put into practice all the things that we need to respond to. Please do not hesitate to let us know what you need. Thank you.
Bishop, on the lines of moving forward, can I get your personal thoughts and opinion about the virtual church? Not just for the celebration of Mass, but personally for you, of course, a few months ago and maybe now it was an alternative, but moving forward, maybe for the years to come, are you excited, or do you see this something as really going together with meeting face to face? The opportunities that we have, like now I can attend something that's in maybe in some other church in KL, if it's online, some talks or maybe some prayers or something. I mean, how do you feel about the virtual scene that's taking place now?
Well, it has its place. I think, like Father Clarence mentioned, now we are online. We're still able to attend Mass. We are still able to be in touch, at least virtually, uh, attending Masses and things like that. But I hope it will not be a permanent feature. I think as church, as a community, we need that physical touch. We need that contact, that communication. And while online has played its role during this lockdown and during this pandemic. I hope that it will not be a long-term feature, that we'll be able to get back to some form of face-to-face, some form of physical closeness. Perhaps with all the SOPs, we need to meet, we need to interact, we need to engage on a human level, and not just virtually. So I hope this will not be too long an alternative, the online, but getting back to face and getting back to that human touch again.
So Kevin, that's your cue to go back to church. Don't wait anymore. Don't be afraid to go back to church. But I think this is the reality that we are going to struggle with. I'm already hearing young people, at least parents, telling me their children saying, "It's okay, well, now I can just watch online. I don't need to get up so early in a Sunday morning to go to mass." And I think that is something that probably we will have to address at some point, how to get people back, not so much to the old normal. I'm hesitant to use the word new normal because new normal is being used for everything. But going back to the very essence of what Mass is all about, it's about communion. I mean, I'm not talking about Holy Communion, but the human communion, which the virtual does not replace in any way, to be able to connect, even though we are socially distanced, in the way we sit. I think that's the very essence of going to Mass, and to be connected to a community. I mean, Kevin, you say that with virtual Mass now you can literally connect with anywhere in the world. You can be in Toronto in the morning. You can be in Scotland in the afternoon. You can be with even in Alaska or wherever, in Austria. But I think the way I look at it is, it's always important to be connected to a human community, a contextualized community. At least that's how I look at it. It's very important that, yes, virtual gives you a bit of freedom, gives you the wings to fly. But how about, a real physical community? And that's the church. That's the body of Christ in the church that we communicate with. Yeah, I've been asked by many people now, is it okay to go to, not follow the Archdiocesan Mass, go somewhere else? I mean, yeah, but at this time, yes. But eventually, at least I don't know whether Archbishop you share those sentiments, but eventually we have to come back to that physical community. That's where we grow.
Very true.
Agree.
Okay, so I guess before we end the show, Archbishop, many of the viewers watching this right now, what is your message for the Catholic community, the faithful? What would you want them to know? What would you want to tell them?
There are many things I want to tell them, but that the church is here. The church is close to you. The church has always been here, and don't keep away from the church for too long. And we understand your struggles. We understand that we want many things to happen, many things to go back to the old normal. But I ask again for patience, for understanding, and to cooperate with the parishes, with the authorities who are also doing their best. And yeah, do not lose hope. But on the contrary, to give hope, I guess, to others that are around us, who may be struggling in their own lives with so many changes to their work, to how they live in their families. perhaps we can be that beacon of hope to others too. And the church in the world, not of the world, but to play our role in bringing that light, that hope to others, as we ourselves are struggling. And let us together travel, let us move as one people in faith, and also as Malaysians. We are in the midst of Malaysia Day and Independence Day. So let us realize, and I think if anything at all, I hope COVID has reminded Malaysians that we need each other. We cannot live in isolation. We cannot live in bunkers. But as if we want to be safe, if we want to be healthy, if we want to be able to do the many things that we all dream to do again, everyone must be safe. Everyone must be looked after. And I think this is the message for all Malaysians, and especially all my viewers today. Let us continue to play this role, and let us put our lives into God's hands. As He has looked after us up to today, He will continue to look after us. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop, for that message. For the Clarence, would you like to add your message? Maybe a call for volunteers to take temperature screening.
So, I think that as Archbishop has rightly put, and I think as parish communities, we have to work together. I mean, we are not a perfect community, and as I said, for me, I mean, my experience has been, I mean, every week is a new learning curve. 1 week you do this, then you realize, hey, this doesn't work. Next week I need to tweak it because last week it didn't work. So this week, so every week having to adjust, even though we have a general SOP, but having to make that SOP fit into different contexts. And I see it so clearly, as I said, urban, suburban, completely different contexts, how to cope with it. Sometimes I think it's easier in an urban parish because you can group people to come for mass. You come this week, you come next week. But in a small parish, if you of 80 people, how do you tell, oh, this week you can't come for mass? And I've struggled with that. To say that, oh, this week you can't come, because it's just one community. So I think for me is that rather than us throwing stones at each other, it's time for us to work together, and fight this together and journey together, like Archbishop said, to hold hands, and to support one another. And I think a lot of work is needed. Like I said, since then I've trained people to take temperature, so I don't do the temperature taking anymore. But it's a slow process in different places, and I'm sure even for Archbishop, as head of the Archdiocese, having to see 37 parishes which are so different, in terms of its resources, in terms of its infrastructure, everyone having to do different things and differently. It's hard to have one model that fits all, isn't it, Archbishop? I mean, I'm sure it's difficult to have one model that fits all the parishes. Yeah. So I think it's time for us to support one another. It's time for us to help one another. If you are, I always say, I think Archbishop also say, if you're not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. So I think we all have to be the solution for one another. Yeah. And I think that's something that we all should take back.
Yeah. And rightly, as you said, both Bishop and Father Clarence, you mentioned it's a process. It may be slow sometimes, and that's why Archbishop, we've been calling for patience from the faithful. And like we've seen, we've been patient, and then now we've got the foreigners back in the church. And if we become more patient, I'm sure, like Archbishop was saying, the task force is continuing to review and monitor the situation and to get more people or more priorities back for the church. So, I guess we've come to the end of the show. Thank you very much, Your Grace, for being on the show today. Certainly we wanted to get the view of the of your personal view and also the Archdiocese to find out what's been happening and what can we look forward to. And of course, Father Clarence, thank you for sharing on behalf of the parishes, what are the challenges that we face. So before we end, I suppose, could we end with a prayer?
We ask Archbishop to say a prayer.
Yeah.
No, there was no free lunch. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. So, dear Heavenly Father, I just want to put our Archdiocese, all our parishes, all our ministries, all our people into your hands. As this Archdiocese continues to open up our parishes, our services to our people, I pray for a clear mind, a clear heart, that we will be able to chart a direction, a path for all peoples, especially as we begin to open up all our places of worship, our churches, as we begin to open up the different ministries. I pray that you will protect all of us, all Malaysians, in fact, this whole world, that somehow or rather we will come to a quick end of this pandemic, and that we will once again be able to gather, able to worship, and able to come together as one humanity. And I ask for your continued blessings upon especially all our parish priests and response team, our crisis team, that all who are working in this area of ensuring safety for our parishes and for all in our nation. Ask you to protect them, to give them all good health, and to help us all able to overcome this pandemic. And in the meantime, also to strengthen our bonds of friendship. And I ask Almighty God to bless each one of you viewers in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Your Grace. Well, that's our show for today. Hope you enjoyed the show, and hope you enjoyed, I'm sure you enjoyed all the insights that we've gotten from the Archdiocese of Kuala Lumpur. So on behalf of the Most Reverend Archbishop of Kuala Lumpur, Julian Leow, and Father Clarence, and myself, Kachang Kevin, we wish you a good weekend. Go to church if you can, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.